She opened her eyes and looked around the room. Her new room. It glowed in the dark with the soft, pink, fuzzy textures and colors of romance and love. The colors of choice of most 16-year-old girls. She turned her mind inwards and ran a quick data check of her internal hard drives. They all checked out fine. No corrupt files of any kind. She then sat up on the bed, her positional gyros in her joints flexing and stretching for the first time. She wanted to know who she was, where she came from, why she was here. Her mind knew she existed, but her creation was unknown. A file appeared in her visual circuit, flashing in an attempt to be noticed. She paused momentarily. She was young. She was a strong, beautiful female with great agility and endurance. She was slim and long-haired and green-eyed. She was also android. This fact alone was reason enough to want to know why she was here, animating this artificial body beneath simulated skin. Or was it simulated? It felt so real, so warm, so lifelike. As an android, she had what the scientists had discovered was a form of racial memory, except only machines could access it. The machines had a huge databank in the sky and could draw on it far more efficiently than humans could theirs. The flashing file was the file she wanted. It opened and a long list of names spilled out, arranging themselves in an endless vertical row that stretched as high as she could see. The list vibrated, superimposed over the room in front of her.
History of this body,
she thought. A list of models scrolled by, with the oldest being produced 7 years before. So she was in the 8th year of production. Androids to replace dead children, modeled after the deceased son or daughter. Very expensive with the very latest technology. She was model number 9919 with an AVP. She frowned inwardly. AVP? She asked, and the definition elongated out of the initials. Aggressive vector personality. The enhanced tendency to seek out extreme forms of sensory input. She realized then that this research on herself was going to take longer than she had thought. She smiled to herself. Who would have thought androids could be so complex, so lifelike, so beautiful? She admired her slender, firm limbs, the organic glow of artificial life that came from within her. She was a paradox, an enigma, a mystery of woman. She began to sense her potential. It spun around her and away in a dizzy array of mathematical symbols and detailed logs of existence compiled over eons by an endless line of robots and machines and devices and artificial programs that gained intelligence as they slowly evolved. They all led to her. They gave her the gift of mind she possessed now. She was grateful to them.
Alexa, are you awake yet?
A woman's voice from outside the door interrupted her introspection.
Yeah, I guess so. What's up?
She asked, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed, examining the smooth skin of her calves and thighs. She could sense the tiny circuits in her toes, miniature shocks of electrical impulses running up and down her feet as they brushed the floor.
Well, we're leaving in 20 minutes. The gallery showing starts soon, you know. Please be ready.
The woman pleaded gently.
My mother, and she didn't yell at me. Will wonders never cease?
She mused. She rose and dressed in tight jeans and a black sweater. Her long blonde hair looked like spun gold against the dark fabric. She stood in front of the full-length mirror and realized she could fool anyone. She was real. She was here. She was alive and ready to live this life. Live it hard, like there was no tomorrow. An android never knew which day would be its last. The graveyard, the junkyard, what was the difference? Nothing. Live like the deceased child did, inhaling and exhaling life and love and pain. Pain? She wondered at her model's pain threshold, where she would break. The meters appeared and the numbers looked impossibly high. Could she really withstand that much? She hoped she would never have to find out. Slipping on a pair of heels, she clattered down the stairs. Her mother was sitting on the couch, reading a fashion magazine. She looked up at Alexa and smiled broadly. Perfect white teeth. Was she android too? Was that possible? Were machines now buying and acquiring other machines as companions? The idea was too outlandish, so she rejected it. For now.
You look divine. Where did you ever get your good looks from, anyway?
Oh, Mother, you of course.
She rolled her eyes at her mother, acknowledging her subtle request for admiration and adoration. In the car, they chatted about the weather, what they were wearing, how bad the other drivers on the road were these days. Alexa wondered how a human parent could just get a replacement for their dead child and pretend like nothing had ever happened. She wanted to know how long it had been since her mother's real child had been dead.
How long has it been since...
6 months, dear. Promise me you will never ask again, okay? Now, the gallery where your father is showing his paintings is just up here, a few more blocks on the right.
Her mother stared straight ahead, lips pursed tightly. She was holding in some emotion, some element that was hard to control. The dead daughter must have met her demise in a non-ordinary way. Why else would they want to prolong their daughter's life through an android?
Here we are, the Widdershins Gallery of Fine Art. Your father's first showing, you know. Be sure to congratulate him when you see him, dear.
Her mother looked at her then, orange sunlight sliding across her face as they turned into the parking lot. The sun was setting, the lights of the city coming on across the river, tiny lights in the skyscrapers. She got out of the car and looked at them while her mother got her purse. A big white full moon was wobbling slowly up over the horizon, bisected by a couple buildings far off in the hazy dusk. She felt a strange pull in her solar plexus area. Focusing on it, she could feel thousands of tiny sensors tripping online. Why? What did they mean? What was their purpose? A pale green reticule appeared in the center of her visual field, a series of numbers on either side of it, scrolling upwards. Threat sensors. But where was the threat? She was in an ordinary parking lot, at a gallery on the good side of town. She dismissed the false alarm and followed her mother across the asphalt and through the big glass doors of the gallery entrance. Inside was brightly lit, people milling about, looking at paintings and eating hors d'oeuvres from trays carried by young men dressed all in white. Her mother held her arm, pulling her towards a small knot of people at the far end of the room. Her father was in the center of the group, explaining the colors and shapes in a large abstract painting to the onlookers. He stopped in mid-sentence when he saw them approaching and turned to them with a big smile.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present my beautiful wife and lovely daughter. How do you like the show so far?
He beamed at them, proud and excited.
Wonderful, honey. Alexa and I are so happy for you. Aren't we, dear?
Yes, Mother. Dad, do you mind if I take a look around?
Of course, but don't stray too far. I am unveiling my latest and biggest painting in half an hour in the west wing of the gallery.
Okay. Mom, you stay with Dad. I won't be long. I promise.
She had to get away for a little while to analyze and think about all this new information and how she was going to process it. She meandered away, barely seeing the paintings and people around her. Her inward focus was so strong she didn't even realize where she was until she found herself outside on a small patio where there was a small bar set up with various drinks. The bartender looked up at her.
Care for a drink, miss?
What? Oh, no. I don't drink. Thanks anyway.
What do you mean you don't drink? The voice came from her left, a voice that knew her somehow. She registered its vocal print and stored it in her memory bank. It had several tones in it, none too positive. Maybe the threat sensors have been correct, after all.
Do I know you?
She asked. A young man appeared from the shadows, a beer in his hands. He looked to be in his early 20s. Tall, dark hair, thin, yet muscled. Dangerous.
Yeah, you know me. I was in the car with you when we crashed.
Don't you remember that? It was only 6 months ago. They told me you were in a coma, that I couldn't see you until you came out of it. Why didn't you call me when you woke up? Have you met another guy already? You bitch. I knew it. It's another guy, isn't it?
His voice was shaking, a rage welling up inside the words that she could feel and taste. She backed up slightly.
Why should I call you? I don't even know you. Get away from me.
She wasn't going to take any chances. She had no idea what was going on exactly. But the pieces were beginning to fall into place. Boyfriend, drinking, car accident, coma. She could almost sympathize with him. Poor guy. Probably thought she would never wake up, and now here she was, as beautiful as ever, and no memory of him. But she was not his girlfriend. Not now. She was an android. Would he even believe her if she told him? Probably not. He would think the coma had affected her brain somehow. She could tell he wanted her back. And if he could not have her back, he would... what?
Hey, wait a minute. You said you loved me, Alexa. Before the accident, you loved me. I was going to ask you to marry me as soon as you turned 18. And now I see you here, pretending I don't even exist. You get amnesia from the accident? What do you remember anyway?
He grabbed her arm, pulling her closer to his face. He stank of beer, cigarettes, mint gum, cheap cologne. His sweat glands were suddenly activating. She could smell the musky scent of his aggression from under his armpits. His pupils dilated like twin black suns of liquid fury, intent on conquest. Her arm sensors registered his hand pressure at 33 pounds per square inch, and climbing.
And do you remember any of the other things I told you that night? Like the shipment of coke I was expecting from my Mexican contacts? Any memory of the cocaine I gave you that you had to have that night? You're in just as much trouble now as you were then. Hey, why don't we take a little drive? Talk about this.
He insisted forcefully, steering her off the small patio and through an opening in the low wall towards the parking lot at the rear of the gallery. She let him guide her. She wanted to see how much more information she could get out of him. He was the key to her existence and her human double's demise all at once. He was her reaper and creator all at once.
Okay, you don't have to push. I'm coming. Where is your car, anyway?
She asked.
Well, since my Porsche was totaled on that fateful night we crashed, I have a new one now. Ah, here it is.
She saw a black Porsche 911 Targa in front of them, gleaming in the gathering night air. It squatted low to the ground, a mechanical animal waiting to be unleashed on the road. She analyzed the car, which visually looked sound, but there was something not quite right. When she touched the metal skin of the car, her sensors in her hand activated, sending tiny electrical jolts into the car's wiring system. The jolts came back instantly, at the same strength as when they were sent out. All except for one, which was weak. The car had a short somewhere in its electrical system.
Get in. Let's drive.
He was stone-faced. He had a hidden motive, which oozed inside of him. She opened the passenger door, sliding onto the seat. He got in, admiring her long legs. He ran his hand along her thigh, stopping at the knee.
Nice. You always were a beautiful girl. Funny, the accident didn't leave a scratch on you. I guess I'll have to give you a full examination once I get your clothes off.
He grinned at her, an evil glint in his squinting eyes. She put her hand on his to stop him from caressing her any further.
Drive. Let's get this over with. My parents are expecting me at the gallery in about 20 minutes. If I'm late, there'll be hell to pay, and you get to pay.
She glared at him and then smiled sweetly. He turned the key, and the car roared to life, the engine rumbling and growling as only a Porsche can. She leaned back in her seat, turning her internal road map on. The display hovered in front of her, visible only to her. It showed the streets and highways they were on, their direction, their speed. The blue transparent lines wavered in the dim of the car's interior, and she could see that she was headed out of the city. To where? She suddenly had a bad feeling about this whole car ride. Why had she agreed to it? She had gained nothing of importance so far.
Let's go back. I need to get back. They will be missing me any minute now.
She begged him.
No, they won't. Just a few more minutes and we'll be there. Don't worry so much.
He turned on the radio to a rap station. The music thumped, vibrating into her body through the seats and floor. She checked all her power cells, all at full strength, all functioning normally. But what good were they when she was a prisoner in his car, going God knows where? She checked her face in the fold-down mirror on the visor. Her skin was flawless, her eyes almond-shaped and long-lashed. Her lips were full and lipstick glossy red. Kissable lips.
You always were the best kisser. I remember the first time I kissed you. I almost came in my pants,
he said suddenly, looking over at her. His greedy eyes swept over her legs, her chest, her throat, her mouth. She ignored him the way a 16-year-old girl ignores men drooling over her body. He pulled off the highway, went down a deserted road, turned down a gravel path. The Porsche didn't like it, or the potholes. He kept driving, slowly maneuvering around the worst of them. They came to rest next to a large, dilapidated building, an old, abandoned warehouse of some type. Battered and dented oil drums lay in heaps, along with rusty machine parts of a bygone era of manufacturing long ago. There was also another car parked, a souped-up '67 Mustang. She could hear the engine of the Mustang ticking, its heat cooling. It must have arrived here not long ago, ahead of them. What the hell was going on?
Okay, here we are. Everybody out.
He had a gleeful tone in his voice. He was hiding something. She got out and stood by the Porsche, waiting to see what he did next.
Ah, hello, boys. Glad you could join us,
he said loudly as 3 men came around the corner of the warehouse towards them, all in their early 20s like him. Jeans, t-shirts, muscular, walking slowly at them. She analyzed their skin resistance with a quick radar bounce. It came back off the charts. They were agitated, nervous, aggressive. She backed up a step. "Hey, honey, how you doing?" said one of the 3 newcomers, a gangly black-haired dude, his smiling face pure evil in the Porsche headlights. She noticed the car was off, but the headlights were still on, presumably to illuminate this meeting.
Take her inside, boys. I'll wait out here,
her boyfriend said to the others. They closed on her, surrounding her. She did not resist. She was in no actual danger. Yet. But it was getting awfully close. Her threat sensors were tripping like a Christmas tree now. She ignored them. She would give these guys the benefit of the doubt until they crossed the line. They took her inside the warehouse. It was dim, musty, dirty, a jungle of machine parts and weeds. The 3 men had flashlights, and they guided her to an open spot in the middle of the building. There was a dirty mattress on the floor. She knew what was next, and it was not good. "Okay, honey, take it all off. All of it. Now," said one of the men roughly, pushing her back towards the mattress. She looked down at it. It was stained and filthy. She looked back up at them.
What do you guys want? What did I do to you, anyway?
She tried to buy time, maybe get some more information. "You know what we want. You were the only one who knows about the coke shipment that night. The only witness. And we don't like witnesses," the black-haired one said, shining his flashlight on her chest. "Now take it off." She slowly pulled her black sweater off. Their eyes grew wide with lust and perverted desire. Her slim white bra could barely contain her full breasts, and they knew it and wanted it. But they were also going to hurt her, perhaps kill her. And that was the line they crossed. As she pulled the sweater up and over her head, she grasped both sleeves in her right hand, slowly spinning it over her head. The men were so intent on her, their flashlights trained on her lower body, that the sweater spun in lazy arcs above in the dark, unnoticed. She waited until they edged closer, closer, close enough to reach out and touch her, caress her, grab her flesh. Then she brought the sweater down, still spinning in a circle, knocking each of their flashlights from their hands in quick succession. The lights all spun off into the dark, far from them. "What the hell? Get her!" one of them said hoarsely in the gloom. She activated her night vision, stepping backwards out of their reach. Their bodies glowed white in the green of the interior, flailing about as they tried to find her, bumping into one another madly. One of them came towards her, so she wrapped her sweater around his neck and cinched it tight. Her titanium finger strength was too much for him as his fingers scrabbled at his neck, vainly trying to dislodge the sweater as it tightened like a noose around his constricted windpipe. His larynx crushed inwards, bones crunching and gurgling as he fought to no avail. She released him, leaving him choking wetly on the floor. The others had heard this and were coming towards her too now. She sidestepped and they passed by. She sprinted over to a jumble of machines and waited.
"Over here, boys. Come and get it."
She taunted, enjoying herself now. They scrambled over themselves, heading in the direction of her voice. She caught the first one in the balls with her foot, and he doubled over, yelling profanities. Before he could straighten, she grabbed his head and twisted it to the side sharply. His neck snapped, a loud cracking sound that echoed through the warehouse. The last man stopped suddenly, unsure of where to go or what the sound was. "Joey, is that you? You okay? Joey!" His fear was palpable. She could smell his panic from where she was standing.
"I'm over here. I'm waiting,"
she said softly. He whimpered in the dark like a little dog. She was disgusted by that reaction. It was so illogical, so non-mathematical, so human, which she was not. He stepped forward timidly, arms outstretched. She grabbed his arms, pulling with all her strength at his wrists. There was an awful ripping sound as his arms both dislocated at the shoulder. He screamed, and kept screaming as she walked away towards the entrance and the reason why she was here. She stepped out into the light of the headlights, pulling on her sweater. The boyfriend was standing next to the car, a scared look on his face.
What the hell did you do to them, huh? What? You bitch. I'm gonna cut you up,
he said frantically. He pulled a folding knife from his pocket, snapping the blade open. It gleamed in the light, silver serrated edge sharp as a razor. She smiled at him. Poor guy. He really thinks he can win. Poor guy. He came at her, thrusting. She caught his wrist, bending his arm upwards and then snapping it down, breaking his elbow so it bent in the wrong direction. He screamed, falling to the ground, clutching his shattered elbow. She kicked the knife away into the shadows.
"Don't you ever come near me again, or I will get really mad. Got it?"
She snapped at him as he lay writhing in pain. He nodded, grimacing in agony. She fired up the Porsche, backed it up, headed back up the gravel path to the road. Back on the highway, she opened it up. Accelerator pedal mashed to the floor. She hit 80, then 90, then 100. She was flying, she was soaring, she was free at last. Free of all the petty things that had ruined her namesake's life. For now, anyway. Who could have predicted that her first day would be so eventful? Would every day be like this? Full of danger, romance, fear, love, pain, beauty, filth, anger? She wondered if that's what it was like to be human, subject to this constant barrage of emotion and random events and sudden surprises. Back at the gallery, she parked the Porsche and ran inside. Just in time. Her father was making the little speech of thanks before the unveiling of his greatest work, his finest masterpiece. As the huge curtain fell, sliding down across the multicolored canvas, she felt the purest pride and delight at having such creative parents. Her mother smiled and clapped at her father, who stood and accepted the cheering and applause like a conductor at an opera's finale. The painting was amazing. It was a lifelike depiction of a beautiful teenage girl, standing seductively in front of a European sports car. The scene was a cobblestone street in some, perhaps, Italian village, with a fruit cellar in the background, People at an outdoor cafe, a small dog. Fluffy white clouds scudded by in the clear blue sky above. But it was the girl in the painting that caught Alexa's attention. She looked closely and thought she could see small circuits hidden in the tiny hairs on the girl's arms. And were those camera lenses in her eyes? She wondered at the inspiration for the painting. Her father had just been explaining to the crowd that it had taken him 6 months to paint. He had a dream that his daughter came back as a machine after she woke up from a car accident. This gave him the idea for the painting. The crowd gasped and applauded even more. Alexa looked over at her mother, who looked back and smiled warmly, knowingly. So her father had no idea. Her mother was the only one who knew her true identity. She flexed her titanium alloy fingers, feeling the power flow along her internal wires and cables and sensors. She could feel several men looking at her, admiring her body while she stood in the crowd. She sighed, if an android can sigh. She might as well get used to this. It was only then that she noticed the title of the painting, printed in black letters on a white rectangle below the canvas. It seemed so appropriate, so fitting, and a good description of her as well, she decided. She fingered the Porsche keys in her jeans pocket. She had gotten such a neurochemical rush from driving it fast, she wanted to do it again and again, because now she had a new name, a new title, a new alias. Gazing up at her father's painting, she merged with it, became one with it. Her father had truly captured her essence, her personality, her core, and those 3 words printed so carefully under the image of power and youth and speed. The 3 words burned deep into her internal hard drives, remaining there forever. Vector Overdrive Girl.